Most publications displaying Polaroid SX-70 images will include its iconic white frame. After all, it is an intrinsic part of the presentation, a self-contained frame that needs nothing more than to be held in the hand to be a complete presentation. However, as a photographer, my focus is on the image I want to make, not on the white frame that makes an appearance after the film is ejected from the camera. So when I look through the viewfinder of my folding SX-70 camera, I see only the image area, not the frame. And Edwin Land, when he designed the camera, was pretty specific in wanting nothing to interfere with the image seen through the viewfinder. The image was everything to Land. And I could also look to the publication of certain iconic photographers who support this idea. Now, Andrew Kertész's photo book, From My Window, was based on his SX-70 project. He was well into his 80s at the time when he did this book, and the book was published while he was still alive. And I imagine he was pretty highly involved in the book design and had a say in how the photographs were presented. And as you can see here, his photographs were all presented without frames, just the image area themselves. And then we can look at Ansel Adams' Polaroid land photography. And he presents Polaroids created by many famous photographers in all types of Polaroid film. Adams was known to be fanatical in all technical areas of photography, including the presentation of photographs to their best. And it's notable that all the SX-70 photographs in this book are also shown without their iconic frames. And these are just two pictures, one by Edwin Land Weber and another one by Tom Jenkins, both on SX-70 film. Now, like Kertész, Walker Evans completed his own Polaroid SX-70 project near the end of his life. And in the posthumously published Walker Evans: Polaroids, the book designer saw fit to reproduce Evans' work without the white frame. Now, it's kind of unfortunate on the cover here. This is obviously a book designer that didn't really know too much about Polaroids, but you can see that he's got the developer pod at the top here, but the image is shown as if the developer pod should be at the bottom. In other words, if this was a real photograph taken by Walker Evans, he would have had to have held the camera upside down while looking through the viewfinder towards his subject. And that is an extremely awkward picture. So I think the designer was taking quite a bit of license in creating this front cover. However, on the inside of the book, see here, all of Walker Evans' pictures are shown the way I imagine that Walker Evans would have liked to see them, and that's just the image without the frame itself. In short, I think a case can be made for matting SX-70s to hide their frames and show only the image area. Now, matting and framing photographs is hardly a novel presentation technique. There's lots of matting tutorials on the subject, not to mention a lot of professional framers completely well versed in making photographs look their best with a nice white matte. But what I want to do is to demonstrate how anyone can easily matte and frame Polaroid SX-70s without much equipment and show examples of what the various matting and framing options will look like. So let's get to it. Here's the stuff you're going to need to matte and frame your own SX-70 photographs. First of all, you're going to need a small flathead screwdriver or kitchen knife, cutlery knife. You need a pair of scissors. You're going to need a bowl of lukewarm water, as well as a clean towel and perhaps a small sponge. You're going to need a weight, such as a heavy book. It's about 8 by 10 inches in size. I'm using Wim Wenders's Instant Stories, nice and heavy, probably pretty appropriate for the situation. You're going to need a scrap SX-70 photograph, and I know we all have lots of those, as well as you're going to need a good photograph that you want to actually frame, matte and frame. You'll need a roll of 1 1/2 inch painter's tape. This usually comes in green or blue, and the point of painter's tape is that it has a low tack so it won't take off the finish of whatever it's attaching to. You'll need a roll of acid-free white linen tape with water-activated adhesive. This stuff happens to come from Archival Methods in the United States, but you can get it in art stores pretty much everywhere. You can see it's linen on one side, and it has this sort of a gummy water-activated adhesive on the other side. You're going to need some clear archival photo corners. They don't necessarily have to be clear, I guess, but I use clear for everything else, so I just have clear around. These are 10 millimeter size, 0.4 inch clear archival photo corners. These are the 3L self-adhesive photo corners. I use these ones quite a lot. One of the key things you're going to have to figure out is the kind of frame that you're and the size of frame that you're going to use. Now, I personally would recommend an 8-inch by 10-inch frame, such as this Studio Decor Fundamentals display case from Michaels. 8 by 10 inch is a good size. It will give a good, nice white matte area around your Polaroid photograph. And on top of that, these are fairly inexpensive. They have a glass glazing. These are the same frames that I used for my framing the icon video. You can see that there's, in this case, it comes with there's a spacer that goes between the glass and the matte board, or the backing anyways. For our purposes, what we're going to do is move that spacer back so the picture is actually, and the matte is actually held right against the glass. But I'll show you how that works in a second or so. So anyways, 8 by 10 inch, as I said, is a fairly common size. You'll find it in lots of other frame styles and frame companies, so it's a good size, I think, to consider. Anyways, once you determine the size, then you can move on to getting your matte board and your backing board as well. Now, there are various sources for this, and we're going to get to that in a second. What I'm suggesting is that, I'll back up for a second. Throughout my entire photography career, whenever I've done gallery shows or created portfolios of my black and white for work, I've always done my own matting. I have a large Logan matte cutter, and it really makes a big difference in terms of cost savings. And once you get the hang of it, it's fairly easy to do. However, I guess I'm getting a little bit tired of doing that, so I'm starting to look at getting my mats pre-cut, and there's various online sources where you can do that. And I think the cost is pretty reasonable, especially considering if you're dealing with Polaroid SX-70 pictures and your matte board is just 8 by 10 inches in size. It seems like it's fairly affordable, a fairly reasonable way to do it. A little bit easier to do it this way. So anyways, that's what I'm going to be talking about now, is getting pre-cut matte boards that you get order online and get delivered to you. No fuss, no muss. Anyways, for your backing, what you're going to need is an 8 by 10 inch either 2-ply or 4-ply acid-free conservation matte board. This is a 2-ply. It's fairly thin, and because it's the backing, really all it's doing is with your photo corners, it's just holding your picture in place. It doesn't have any real big support function. So as long as it's a fairly good conservation material, that's all you need to worry about. So 2-ply is perfectly adequate. Now the only problem is that 2-ply seems to be kind of hard to find online. I know Archival Methods does supply 2-ply matte board, conservation matte board, but if you can't find it, then you could always use a 4-ply matte, similar to what you're using for your window mats. So anyways, that's that. Now, then you're also going to need to get your window mats as well. It's a window mat. You can see it's got a bevel cut, nice bevel cut, that will just fit your SX-70 picture. I like to size my windows so that they're just slightly larger than the actual image area, so they show just a little bit of the white frame around the image. It's just I think a way of showing everyone that you're not cropping your image, that you're actually showing the complete full image of your SX-70 picture. And on top of that, it doesn't look that bad anyways. So anyways, that's what I'm shooting for. So in terms of dimensions, My recommended dimensions would be a window width of 3 1/8 inch, a window height of 3 1/4 inch. I like to offset my windows slightly higher so they're not vertically not right in the center of the mat, so I move them up a bit. So when I'm specifying online, I have specify a top of mat size of 2 3/4 inches. So that's from the window opening to the top of the mat, and then at the bottom becomes 4 inches from basically the window opening to the bottom of the mat. Now, a 4-ply mat is one option that you could use for your pictures, but there are other options as well. For example, you could go to an 8-ply mat, such as this. You can see how it's double the thickness of a 4-ply mat. It looks really luxurious, works really well with especially black and white Polaroids, but I think even color Polaroids as well. So 8-ply is quite nice. The only downside is that for 4-ply mats, you can use a fairly affordable kind of conservation board. I mean, it's not super high quality, but it's good enough for normal framing. Once you step up to 8-ply, that's when 8-ply tends to be a very high-end kind of conservation mat board, usually called museum board. It's 100% cotton rag material as opposed to these 4-ply cheaper conservation boards which have a cellulose fiber. So just bear that in mind. So another option, if you don't want to go to the expense of an 8-ply mat board anyways, then you can go to a double mat. And here we have basically it's one base mat, which is the same size, the same window size that I've been talking about, the size of your picture. And then it has an overmat, a larger mat, that is, in this case, is 1/4 inches wider on all sides. So it gives you the 8-ply effect, but in a stepped sort of fashion. So you have to evaluate how much you want to spend and what you want your pictures to look like. These are all kind of factors. Now you can also get 8-ply mats in a round shape for your round Polaroids, and that looks really, really good. If you don't want to go to the 8-ply mat, you could go to a place that will do 4-ply round cuts. And in this case, this is the size of my circular Polaroids, my round Polaroids. And then it's got an overmat, a double mat, that is a little bit larger than that. Again, giving the idea of a thicker 8-ply mat. So it's something to consider. So there's various sources for pre-cut archival mat boards with windows pre-cut and backing boards as well. One of those is Archival Methods in the United States, and they do 4-ply and 8-ply mats, and I'm doing them either in a rectangular or with round windows. The other neat thing that they will do is that they will assemble a package consisting of a 2-ply mounting board and a 4 or an 8-ply window mat with a linen tape hinge already attached at no additional charge, and you might want to consider that. Archival Methods, I've used them quite a bit. It does get a little bit on the expensive side, or can get on the expensive side, just because of the shipping charges coming from the United States to Canada. So that's just something to be aware of if you happen to live in Canada. Now, in Canada, there are two possible sources. There is the Mat Shop Canada does 4-ply and 8-ply mats with rectangular windows. And I'll just note that they do have an online design tool, but it's not set up for offset windows. However, you can specify the offset in the special instructions box at the checkout. The second possible source is Custom Mats Canada, and they do 4-ply mats, either round or rectangular windows, but they don't do 8-ply mats at all. And again, their online tool is set up to do an offset. Now, just backtracking a bit to Archival Methods, they will also do offsets. It's on their online tool. They do it specified in a slightly different way. It's a matter of a 1-inch offset upwards or 2-inch offset upwards. I generally use a 1-inch offset when I'm ordering my window mats from archival methods, and that's in the 8 by 10 inch size. So that's just something to bear in mind. So let's get on to actually building our mat and getting our picture matted and then assembling into the frame. And I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a 4-ply mat for my example and a 2-ply backing. And we're just going to lay that out. So we lay it out with the window mat facing down and making sure that the bottom of the mat is facing away from where we're going to join it with the backing board right here. Okay, now because I'm using a 2-ply mat, it doesn't fit exactly level with the 4-ply window mat. So what I do is I just use a little piece of scrap 2-ply mat board just so it gets up to the same level. There we go. Put them side by side. I take a piece of linen tape, and the linen tape just has to be about a little bit shorter than the width of the mat board itself. So in other words, a little bit less than 8 inches. Doesn't have to be terribly precise. Doesn't have to be precisely cut. Then we take our lukewarm water, and there's various ways of doing this, but this is what I like to do, is I just take it quickly through the lukewarm water, like that. Let it drain quite a bit, as much as you can. And the gumminess is all ready to be glued down now. So trying to, without moving the mat board, the backing or the window mat, position that over the joint between the two, or the connection between the two, flatten it down, and then I take a clean towel and do that. There we go. Now I'll say that I do it this way with my little pile of my tub of water here and just putting it through. A lot of people seem to recommend just saturating a sponge, putting your tape on a piece of newspaper, just wiping the gummy side of your tape and then attaching it to that. So that's just something to consider. I like it this way. It's fairly nice, clean and easy. So now what you do is you fold them over and you make sure that they're aligned like that. Okay. So you want it nice and tight seal there. You take that, we'll move our tub of water out of the way, and here's the complete mat, the hinged mat. Now what we have to do is basically take our heavy Wim Wenders book, lay it over top of that, and I would leave it there for about an hour perhaps. So anyways, here's the finished one that I've done a couple of hours ago. You can see that it's got the window mat, the 2-ply backing, and it's all hinged together by the piece of linen tape there. And now we can start to get our picture into the frame. Now, to do that, I'm going to put that aside as well. This is where we take our scrap photograph, we place it in the center of the 8 by 10 inch mat. It could be any piece of mat board really, that's the same size that you're framing with. Put it in the center, roughly in the center, it doesn't have to be exact. Take a piece of painter's tape. A little bit, the idea is that you want it a little bit longer by about 3 inches than the actual width of your mat board. So wider than 8 inches by about that much, you can see. Put it down there, just stick it to the picture itself. Then we flip it over. Again, place it sort of in the center of the frame, sticky stuff. There we go, like that. Take another piece of tape, painter's tape, and this one should be just slightly bit wider than 8 inches, wider than your mat board. And we put that over top, just right over top of the other piece of tape, so it's just a little bit over the edge of the mat board, like that. Okay, like that. Now, Now we've got this. This is a way of positioning your picture in the mat. And once you have one of these, you can use it for an infinite number of pictures. Basically, your little template thing is done at this point. So what we do is then we just position it inside the mat and just eyeball it so that we get it accurately into position using the little pieces of tape that are hanging out the side here. So position it so we got even edges on the top three sides, and of course the bottom is going to be a little bit larger, just the way I like it. So there we have it. And once we got that, then we take this, fold the tape over the back, so it's sticking now to the back of your backing board. Now we open this up, and you can see it's held pretty well in place, in position. It's not going to move too much. This is why you need really the 1 1/2 inch painter's tape. The wider the better, really. You don't want anything narrower than that. Otherwise, it offers too much flex, and your Polaroid will start to move around, and once you get your photo corners mounted, you might find that your picture is not in position anymore. Anyway, so we've got that. Now we take our photo corners, and we just start putting them one on each corner of the picture. And again, the painter's tape really helps holding it exactly in the position while you do this. And you put them in as tight as possible into the corners. Again, these are the 10mm size. You wouldn't want them any bigger than this, because not only will it interfere with the image itself, but it will also make it harder to remove this temporary SX-70 picture and put the real SX-70 in its position. There we go. It's number 3. There we go. Again, as tightly as you can. So you want the final picture to be accurately held in position, so it won't move around at all. And there we go, number 4. And there we go. And just fasten them down nicely, make sure they're in place. And we just flip this over just to make sure it's still in position. And then it's just a matter of taking the painter's tape. This is why we use painter's tape, so it doesn't rip apart your backing board. And put it back over, and then we just carefully remove the scrap photograph that we have here and put this aside, and then we just carefully slip in our actual photograph, the one we want to have framed in position there. And that's the beauty of SX-70. They're all the same size, so it doesn't matter whether you have a vintage Polaroid SX-70 or a current one. They're all the same size. Anyways, there we have it. You can see it's nicely matted, nicely centered, didn't move at all. It's an easy way of doing it, and you can see it didn't take very long to get to this stage at all. Now, if you were doing circular pictures, circular Polaroids, it's a very similar kind of technique, where you would have just flip this over, just as an example, flip this over. You would have this mounted to your backing, your 2-ply backing, for example. You would take your Polaroid picture and just position it exactly so. Again, I've sized it so it's just a little bit larger than the image itself, circular image. In this case, it's a good idea to try to get your tape going right across the very center of the image, so that you can level it. It's going to be kind of hard, so at least when you're doing it this way, you can visually see whether it's off kilter or not. So that's just something to bear in mind with that. So we'll put those aside now and go back to this. So we've gotten this far. Now we just have to pop this into the frame. So we're going to move this aside for a second, and we'll take our 8 by 10 inch Michaels frame and gotta bend up all these little lugs here. Again, this is why you need a screwdriver, just to save your fingers. I think I've mentioned before that we've had a very long winter here in Winnipeg, in Manitoba. It was a whole very dry climate, and my hands are just cracking, so the screwdriver really helps save them. Anyway, we've got that open, taking the backing off. This is the same frame I used for the framing the icon video that I did previously. In this case, you can see that there's glasses here, we've got the spacer, and then the backing goes on behind that and the picture as well, so it sort of floats inside that space. We don't want that. We want the image right against the glass. So what we do is we take out this spacer. It comes out easily enough. And we just pop in our, well, before we do that, what I want to do is just use some canned air just to blow out any dust, and also same with the image in the mat itself, just to clean it off. You just want to make sure when you're using canned air that you don't shake it, otherwise you'll get liquid propellant spraying all over your image. So we pop in the image then, and now here you have the choice of either putting the spacer in first and the mat in the back like that, or putting the mat in first and then the spacer, and then bending over the little metal lugs. What we're going to do is put the spacer in first. Okay, there we go. Got the spacer in, and we put the backing in, our masonite backing. And the reason you might want to do it this way is if you have a very shallow hanger on your wall that you want to connect up to this sawtooth hanger on the frame itself. This keeps the hanger close to the back edge of the frame. Anyway, so we've got that. Now we just bend these steel lugs back down again, just to hold everything in place. And there we have it, finished print. And I think they look quite marvelous. I really like it doing it this way, especially like with the black and white Polaroid film. I think it works great. As you can see, it really didn't take that long to do it. If you were doing a show of Polaroids, then you could really put this all together fairly quickly and fairly economically as well, I would say. Don't forget that these frames come in a pack of 3, and they cost, like in Canada, they cost like $24.99 for a pack of 3 of them, which is pretty good. And just the cost of your pre-cut mats and mat boards and window mats, you're pretty much, that's all you really need. So anyways, this is what it looks like with a 2-ply mat, or 4-ply mat, sorry. See, it looks quite effective. Let's show you some other examples here. Here's another black and white picture, but this is with an 8-ply mat. And you can see it just looks that much more luxurious. It looks really luxurious. I think it really draws you into that image. It makes the image look just that much more precious as well, which I think Polaroids do look quite precious with their sort of shiny surface. So anyway, that's the 8-ply mat. This is an 8-ply mat cut by Archival Methods, by the way. They do a pretty good job, I think. Let's take a look at that. We're going to pull the 4-ply to the side, and then we're going to take, just to show you that if you didn't want to go with the more expensive 8-ply approach, you could go with the presumably less expensive a double mat with 2 4-ply mats, sort of creating the stepped effect. However, the effect is the similar depth to the 8-ply mat. So you just have to decide what's appropriate for your images and how much you want to spend and that kind of thing. So anyways, that's just something to consider. I'll put that one aside, and I just want to show you that one example of a round Polaroid, which again I think round Polaroids look really, really good. with the 8-ply mat. These round mats, again, were cut by archival methods, and they turned out really well. I think cutting round, especially round 8-ply mats, windows, would be extremely difficult. I certainly wouldn't want to try doing that myself. So I think they do a really good job. Anyways, that just gives you an idea. So now that we've sort of showed you side by side on my desktop, I'm going to take you downstairs to my little hallway gallery. We're going to see what these 4 pictures look like when they're hanging on the wall. So here we have the same 4 photographs now mounted on the wall. You can see the first one right here is the 4-ply mat. A little bit of the SX-70 white around the edges is showing. And then here we have the 8-ply mat. Again, very deep, very rich looking. This is the double mat with 2 4-ply layers. And here we have an 8-ply round mat for a round Polaroid photograph. So hopefully these will give you an idea of what the 4 different matting techniques look like when applied to a Polaroid photograph and mounted on a wall. So I hope this gives you some more ideas about how to go about framing and matting your SX-70 pictures. So in the meantime, have fun framing and matting, and we'll see you next time.